Welcome to the Springs Are Everywhere podcast, a production of SMI, the Spring Manufacturers Institute. I'm your host, Gary McCoy, Executive Director of SMI. In this edition, we'll talk about strategies to help attract millennials to your business. We'll talk with Jake Hall, a passionate advocate for manufacturing, automation, digital transformation, and skilled trades. In our second segment, we'll chat with Lisa Ryan, the founder of Grategy. Lisa is a popular speaker who's been to 2 SMI annual meetings. Lisa will tell us about how being thankful can help attract and retain top talent in today's market. The Springs Are Everywhere podcast is brought to you in part by our platinum sponsor, Gibbs Interwire. Well, I want to welcome Jake Hall, who is known by the moniker the Manufacturing Millennial, to the program. While it's not a requirement to be part of the podcast, Jake, but I'm always glad to welcome a fellow Cubs fan.
Absolutely. A lot of big changes coming up this year for the Cubs, so we're going to see how it goes.
Well, Jake, it was easy to find you when I met you at the Assembly show about a year ago because you were the only guy in the audience with a Cubs hat on. So I get that part. How'd you come up with the phrase, the manufacturing millennial?
Yeah, so I guess to start with the phrase, the manufacturing millennial, I'll kind of have to go back to where my career started in the industry. So I've been a part of manufacturing pretty much since I was a kid. I started working for a manufacturer when I was in high school, 16 years old. I got a summer job working for a company at the time, JR Automation. They're a lot bigger now. But I did what, every young kid greenhorn does in the industry is sweep the floors, wipe down and blow off all the mills and the CNC and the lathe equipment, grind and wipe down with acetone too many welded beams and stuff to get welded, and went into and figured out that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed manufacturing. I really enjoyed seeing how things were built. I was part of First Robotics when I was in high school, so I went to college and got an engineering degree. And that was the big thing that every single guidance counselor out there said, hey, if you like math and you like doing stuff, go to college, go get an engineering degree. And wasn't aware of all the other options that existed at the time. So I went to college. I then went to automation distribution for 7 years, selling robotics, vision systems, motion control, PLC, safety sensors. And during that time, we were part of an association called AHTD. And so I had the opportunity as a young professional to go to a professional organization to see how all these other businesses and companies run and how they network and collaborate together. And when I was at the event, there was a speaker there that was talking about, preparing for the future, making change. And I figured, man, the manufacturing industry is really exciting, but they're not really preparing much for the future when I don't see any other people here who are my age as part of this leadership group. So that's how the name the Manufacturing Millennial came about. Is I'm the only millennial in manufacturing, it felt like, being at this conference. So I figured, well, I'll be this, outspoken, unapologetic, new guy on the block, person. That would have been, 2019 is when, the idea would have came out. And my career then, I guess you could say, what I do now dramatically shifted in 2020 when the pandemic happened. And, I started posting a lot more content on social media. We were told to go work from home, as it was, just work from home, flatten the curve at the time is what we were being told to do. So I stayed at home and I created content, started posting on LinkedIn. I had a couple hundred connections at the time, just for a resume is what I thought LinkedIn was at the time, which is a place to upload your resume. And so, over that first year, I gained a couple thousand followers here and there. And over, time, I gained more and more and more where, now I have a lot of followers and more and more people are reaching out to me saying, hey, Jake, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? How do you get millennials excited? What new technology should we be looking at? How do we better change the culture? How do we adopt this type of technology? What are the risks around it? So, over that time, I've been able to be blessed and go around and do a lot of keynotes, a lot of presentations, create a lot of content. And that's how the Manufacturing Millennial came to be.
So, Jake, the next issue of our magazine, Springs Winter 2024, is about recruiting, developing, and retaining staff. So let me just ask you the first part. How do you recruit? younger millennials and Gen Z students?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. And I think what we need to understand as manufacturers is where our talent, where our employees exist. And when you look at that, 98.6% of all manufacturers here in the United States are considered a small to medium sized business. You know, that's what the government classify us as a manufacturer. We realize that we're not really pulling talent from across the state or across the country, across the region. You know, all of our talent is local for the majority part about it. So when we look at how do we bring this next generation on board, it's getting that talent that's local to you, which is part of the community, which is where either they'll be graduating from a university or a local community college or a trade school or even just through high school. So what we need to be doing as manufacturers is figuring out why are future generations, especially Gen Zs, not wanting to go into manufacturing? Why is it that we have such a bad image of manufacturing still being such a dark, dirty, dull, dangerous industry that our grandparents used to work at, where all the jobs left in the 80s and 90s and went overseas, and it's not a future stable career and it's not a well-paying one anymore. And I think, in order for us to change those misconceptions on how do we bring more people into our industry to fill the 600,000 current open jobs in manufacturing across the United States and the expected 2.1 to 2.4 million open jobs by 2030 to 2035. It's getting these kids into manufacturers to understand the value that this industry has for them and how it can be such a phenomenal career opportunity for them, regardless of what degree of education or career path that they take. Manufacturing has opportunities for them.
So, Jake, you've recruited them to your company. What are some ways you can help develop that talent?
Yeah, I mean, so I think getting those kids into your company as a manufacturer is one of the hardest parts. Keeping them stay or keeping them to stay is one of the hardest ones as well. So when you look at the average baby boomer is going to have three different jobs their entire career, right? But the average millennial is going to have 11 different jobs by the age of 30 is a big discrepancy in work ethic. Well, not necessarily work ethic, but work culture in the future. So how do manufacturers keep people to stay at their company? They need to give them purpose and opportunity at them, where younger generations aren't just simply looking for an 8 to 5 job anymore. They're looking for flexible opportunities. They're also looking for career growth and individual impact that they can make on the company. I think a lot of times when we saw from a cultural perspective of older generations, they were very content with an 8 to 5 job and doing the same job over and over again. In a lot of cases, and there was career advancement, through that time as well. But what we're seeing through younger generations is they want to be a lot more flexible, right? They're kind of standing up to this 8 to 5 job and come and work Saturday mornings as well. They want to have flexibility with what they work now, and the majority of a lot of businesses and cultures are feeding them that opportunity, right? When we think of what Uber and Grubhub and Lyft and all those companies that exist now that didn't exist 10 years ago that allow for flexible work, it's much more attractive to younger generations. I mean, you hear right now that Amazon is pushing Amazon Flex right now, right? Where you can grab your car, go pick up a bunch of boxes and then go deliver those boxes and get paid as soon as you're done. So all of a sudden, us as manufacturers, we keep people in our industry by creating more flexible opportunities, but also creating more opportunities in terms of promotion or learning or continued education or helping battle the student debt that so many young people are facing these days, where if you as a manufacturer can say, hey, come and work for us when you graduate high school. We're going to pay you $5,000 or $10,000 a year for you to go to school to get an apprentice degree or to go get an engineering degree. And while you're doing that, we're going to pay you to work for us at the same time, where now you're getting real world experience. That's investment that the manufacturing industry is creating that not many other industries have or give the opportunity for young professionals to do. And that's what makes manufacturing so incredible, right? Because you can have a high school degree, you can have a GED, you could be an apprentice, you could be part of a vocational school, you can have an engineering degree, you can have a PhD. But there's so many different opportunities. And once you're in the industry, it's not like you're locked to that one career opportunity as either. You can grow in terms of being a frontline worker to a shift lead to a maintenance technician to a maintenance lead to then a engineering person in engineering to a director of engineering to a plant manager. I've seen these transitions happen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times where I talk to people and say, hey, how did you get your career? How did you start your career in manufacturing? I was a frontline worker and now I'm a director or a VP or a C level position within a company. That's what manufacturing has to offer, and that's how we keep people to stay in manufacturing. Is we don't just pay them well, we just don't give them flexible opportunities, but we show the potential for growth that this industry has to offer.
So, Jake, I know you're familiar with a lot of the newer technologies, the automation and stuff. Is that a proven strategy to help keep those younger folks in the workforce of manufacturing?
100%. One of my favorite examples is when I got my first car. I went to AutoZone and I got a Haynes repair manual for my 1996 Ford F-250. Today, I don't pick up a Haynes repair manual when I need to repair something on my car anymore. I go on YouTube. And it just goes to show that these young generations of millennials and Gen Zs are very much a digital native to the way they learn and the way they communicate. So if you as a manufacturer aren't leveraging technology and digital ways of learning and problem solving, you're really missing, you know, you're missing the ball when it comes to, um, as Javier Baez did all too often. Sometimes he dropped the ball, and manufacturers a lot of times are dropping the ball when they have a fear of adopting technology. When technology can be such a means to um, attracting the next generation, but also retaining the next generation in there, right? Because all of a sudden you bring on a new cobot to do, let's say, machine tending, where you're a press manufacturer, a spring manufacturer, and you have all these parts that you're manufacturing, and instead of an operator that's constantly shadowing over this one machine, you can have a cobot do that, and all of a sudden you have a young kid who's programming that cobot to run three different machines, which is now battling the labor shortage that you have, but is also bringing the next generation on board because they're attracted to technology. So, like, that's just a very simple, low level example of how technology can not only excite but enable future workers in our industry.
So, Jake, what do you see as the skill set of future manufacturing professionals?
It's one of those things where manufacturing needs every skill set. And for so long we were told that your only success is if you're going to go to a university and get a 4-year degree in something. Well, we're finding out really quickly with $36,000 of average of student debt, and a majority of people not even using their degree outside of the STEM career, right? STEM career is pretty locked in. You're gonna get a job with what you're doing. But so many people went and got what I call the GED of college and some basic degree that there's no value that's created to that. Um, so the skill sets within our industry is, yeah, we're still going to need engineers, but what we're going to need a lot is a skilled labor as well, and a skilled workforce, where we have all of these older Gen Xers and these baby boomers who've been in the industry, who have 40 years of tribal knowledge underneath their feet. That the knowledge is what manufacturers should be scared of that's leaving the industry, not just the two hands, but it's the 40 years of experience running those machines and equipment, and just listening or smelling a machine and knowing what's going to happen. I joke about that, but that's so true. Like, I've heard people who literally have smelled machines and said, something's wrong because it's running too hot, or there's not enough lube in this machine because it's one of those, you can't teach that, you learn that. So what is the new skill sets that are new? I guess you could say employees and generations are going to need. It's going to be a diverse a group of skill sets where it's not just going to be one skill anymore. It's like the growth of mechatronics in our industry, right? Where it's not just being a mechanical engineer, an electrical engineer, a controls engineer. It's a person that understands how all three different, skills can be used together to solve something. I think the biggest skill that this future generation needs to learn is a desire to learn, and a desire to put in time to learn. I think a lot of people, it's like they graduate and then they settle and they expect a job and they expect, I'm just set for the rest of my life. People who succeed in life are ones that never stop learning. And like, I think that's just a skill. It's a culture thing. It's a mentality, but it's very much of a skill as well, of wanting to continue to learn. I think is huge for our industry, and putting in, I guess you could say, that mentality is going to be huge for our future generations, and not just saying, continue to learn, but really explain to them the value of wanting to continue to learn new skills and new skill sets, and not just how something works, but why it works. Like, I think that's just another thing as well, where, a person I think we're losing a ton of just the know-how of what things are happening, right? We can hire a technician on how to keep a machine running, but do we still have the knowledge of why that machine is built that way? And I think that's it's a broad answer, to you, Gary, like, where this is one of those things is, I think one of the biggest fear, I guess you could say, risks that we as in domestic manufacturing face is not just the labor shortage, but the know-how of why we do what we do, if that makes sense. And I think it's one of those things where, how do manufacturers keep that up there? They have to transfer that knowledge to a digital means, through digital work instructions, through virtual reality, augmented reality, ways of taking that knowledge, that tribal knowledge that exists, and keeping it documented in a digital way that can then be passed on. And so, like, that's one that goes back to your kind of question earlier on, is technology important? 1000%, because technology is doing so much more than just a one-to-one value replacement in terms of older generations retiring and leaving and newer generations coming on board.
Well, Jake, man, I appreciate your passion for manufacturing. It's very exciting, and it comes through every time I've talked to you. So how do folks find you? I believe LinkedIn might be the best way.
Yeah, absolutely. Check me out on LinkedIn. Just search Jake Hall on LinkedIn, or the Manufacturing Millennial on LinkedIn. You'll find me. You could just search Jake Hall Manufacturing on Google, and you'll find me on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter /X or TikTok. But LinkedIn is my main platform that I use. Or you find me at trade shows. I am a massive proponent of be a part of associations, be a part of trade shows, go to these in-person events and network, and then not just come yourself, but bring that next generation with you. Like, I think that's just the biggest opportunity that's missed, is when you come to these shows, but the next generation isn't coming with you. Show them the value and the excitement and the value of networking and relationships. Like, right, that's so many things happen through a handshake. And it's like, yeah, to answer your question, you can find me online, but I'm going to be at 40 plus shows through associations, events next year. Find me at one of those as well.
So just look for the Cubs hat.
Look for the Cubs hat. You'll always see me with the blue Cubs hat.
Well, Jake, thanks again for joining us today, and go Cubs.
Go Cubs. Hope we got a good season this next year.
As a longtime supporter of SMI's mission to inform the spring industry, Gibbs Interwire is proud to be the platinum sponsor of the new Springs Are Everywhere podcast. For over 6 decades, Gibbs Interwire has provided high-quality spring wire and strip products in carbon, nickel, red metals, and stainless steel alloys, along with specialty items such as shaped wire, cable, and brush wire. With many locations throughout North America, our experienced team is available where and when you need us. Gibbs Innerwear offers exceptional value to our customers by providing a vast inventory from the best suppliers worldwide. Gibbs Innerwear is a partner of Alloy Specialty Metals and a combined metals company. For your quote today, call Gibbs Innerwire at 800-800-4422 or visit us at gibbswire.com.
Well, welcome back to the Springs Are Everywhere podcast. I want to welcome Lisa Ryan to the program. Lisa, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So, Lisa, you're the founder of Grategy, and you're a popular speaker. You've been to 2 of our SMI meetings, and you also just wrote an article for us for Springs Magazine. It'll be coming out in our winter 2024 issue. And I just want to ask you up front, how can a company make money by being grateful?
Well, if you look at a post-pandemic economy that we're in right now, people's priorities have changed. And after years of whether they were on furlough, they're asking themselves questions, do I want to stay? Do I like this job enough to stay? Can I do something somewhere else? Can I make more money? Can I be happier somewhere else? And when you get the culture right, when you have those connections with people that you're building a relationship with them, you have gratitude strategies that we'll talk about, you have a good onboarding process, which you'll see that in the upcoming article. It's these little things that keep your employees with you because turnover is expensive. And wouldn't you rather be making springs instead of worrying about rehiring people who left last month?
So, Lisa, what are some actionable strategies to foster a culture of gratitude?
Sure. Well, in my programs, a lot of the key gratitude strategies or grategies that I talk about, we could talk about them individually, would be the level of accessibility, letting your employees know who know who you are and that you care enough to know about them, getting feedback from them. Not rolling your eyes when they come in, offering ideas, but actually listening to what they're doing and implementing them. Because even if they're brand new to the industry, they see the world differently. And something that they bring from something completely different from springs manufacturing may be just what you need to implement to turn things around. The third one, to look at the mission. How are your employees a part of something that's bigger than they are? I mean, because again, springs are literally in everything. So instead of just the point that you're making springs, what are they actually contributing to? Is it, well, we're making springs for the aerospace industry. We're making springs for the medical industry. So it's not just the pieces parts, but it's the end result of where that's going. Next is investing in your employees, to spend the money, make the investment on training, because not only are you going to have a better trained team, but they're also going to be more loyal to you because they are seeing that you're investing in them. And of course, no gratitude strategy would be complete without acknowledging excellence, catching your employees in the act of doing things well, and specifically thanking them. And if you're thinking, is this woman telling me I have to thank my people for doing their job? I mean, they get paid every Friday. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Because being specific, acknowledging the good work that your employees do. Again, money is important. We're not going to say it's not. But when you get the culture right, you do not have to be the highest paying employer in your area, because people don't want to leave.
So back to teasing your article for Springs Magazine. It won't be out for a couple more months, but you talk about the game-changing power of onboarding to both to attract but also to retain top talent. Just give me a little teaser what you were talking about there.
Yeah. For attracting them, a lot of people think that onboarding starts on the day that the employee starts their new job with you. And it's actually more like T minus 2 weeks. They've accepted the offer and now you're starting that process. Maybe you are having them fill out as much of their paperwork as they can beforehand, because with every single writing of that pen, they're making a deeper commitment to you. So by the time they get there, you have the opportunity to take them around the plant, to introduce them to people, to set them off on a good foot, to assign a lunch buddy to them so that they can kind of get behind the scenes, to welcome them with your logo swag, because there is nobody prouder to wear your company wearing apparel than a new employee. And how does it retain your employees? Well, maybe you're getting them involved in the process. I've heard this from some of my clients, that they're interviewing a candidate and they'll actually have that person go on the shop floor and meet some of the people that are actually working there, and leave them alone with that person for a while. And then afterwards, they will ask that employee, so what do you think? And that employee would be like, yeah, that person's really cool. I'd love to work with them. Or they would be like, if you bring that person in, because you can't believe the things that they were saying to me that they did not tell you about how terrible their last job was. So, but they also feel that they are invested in the process because they played a role in it. So we're looking at, how do we make that new employee feel welcome, and how do we make the other employees who are there a part of the process, so that they're forming those bonds and they're connecting. They feel that they're being heard, they're being listened to, and they're have more people that can help out and do the job better.
Lisa, I know that you're a big believer that leadership is the most important thing to get these strategies going. So what are some successful things you've seen for recognition and employee celebration that actually work?
It really does start at the top. If leadership is looking at this as just another check mark, because they read an article or they went to yet another employee engagement program, what do I have to do now to engage my employees? It really starts with this personal commitment to, I'm going to find out, what do my employees like? Would they prefer celebrations during work hours, maybe cutting off an hour early on Friday and having a little celebration? Or would they like to do things off-site? Would they like to go bowling or laser tag or, paintball or, I've heard people do all kinds of things together. But when you're looking at these celebrations coming together and you're building those bonds with people, because when you are on having a party or doing an off-site event, people are building relationships with each other, and they're not necessarily just sticking to the topics they would talk about at work. So now the Gallup organization has found that your most engaged employees have a best friend at work. They don't say good friend. They don't say people I tolerate. They say best friend. And so we get those relationships to form when we give them opportunities to celebrate together. So, and it's not just sharing the numbers when the numbers are fantastic, because maybe when the numbers aren't fantastic, to ask your employees, hey, what are you seeing that maybe we can do better, because our numbers aren't where they want to be. We're not coming at it from a place of judgment, but we're looking for their impact, their input, because they know their jobs better than you know their jobs.
So, Lisa, I think we all have to face the reality that the workplace is changing. There's a lot of, baby boomers retiring. The gray folks are leaving the workforce, and we've got a big gap to fill. And I just want to ask you, what are some things that can be done to attract the millennials and the Gen Z audience to spring manufacturing?
Yeah. Well, part of it is changing the conversation about manufacturing and getting away from that idea that it's dark, dirty, and dangerous and everything your mother ever warned you about. How can you encourage people to check out your plant? Do you take advantage of Manufacturing Day, which is the first Friday in October? Do you have a bring your family to work day so that so that your employees can show their offspring, hey, this is what I do, this is what we do? Because even at that point, there's a small percentage of those kids that are going to be like, "Ooh, this is cool, I want to do that." And then they see some automation in the plant and they're all over it. But we also look at building relationships not only with guidance counselors to let them know that manufacturing is just as good of an option as a 4-year college, but looking at the the community colleges and their workforce development, building relationships with those facilities, because you can actually basically script out the exact skills that you want and they can build an educational program around that. So that's on the Gen Z and the millennial end. But what about our tenured employees who we are losing a lot of leadership, of company history as they're walking out the door? So I've heard a lot of my clients are focusing now on legacy. It's like, Janet, you've been here for 30 years. We're not looking just to replace you. We realize at some point, you're going to leave us, but we would like your legacy to continue. So I had one of my clients, they actually had GoPro cameras that their employees would be using while they were working. And then they would look at the film, because you ask Janet, well, why did you do that? And she'd be like, I don't know, I've been doing it this way for 30 years. But if you can show the film and say, I noticed that you did this here. Why did you do that? Oh, that's because this is what I learned. So now the knowledge becomes more transferable. And we also know that our younger generations, they learn by video. They want to see the actual action instead of reading instruction manuals or, watching PowerPoint presentations. They can see it being done. So you're really taking advantage of the skill, the knowledge, the history, the experience of the tenured people, and you're inviting the newer people to learn and to be exposed to a really cool career.
Lisa, I think one of the most interesting things you said when you spoke to our group a few years ago was there's a whole idea of a stay interview versus an exit interview. What's that all about?
Yeah, and exit interviews are great because, they show a pattern, but I also think that they may be a little late. It's like, hey, why are you leaving? On the other hand, stay interviews are conversations that you are having with your employees to ask them questions like, tell me 3 things you like about working here. And when they do that, now you have fodder for attracting new people because you're getting it from the mouths of your employees, the things they like about working for you. Now, the next question is not tell me 3 things you hate about working here, because that would not be a fun conversation, but it may be tell me 3 things that you would change if you were me. What resources do you need? How can I be a better manager? This is a scary question. What would cause you to leave? But now you're having that conversation. And when you're asking the questions, you are a poker face. You're not arguing. You're not justifying. Because some people go, what, Lisa, they don't understand why we have to make these decisions. Doesn't matter. Your only response, thank you for sharing. Because they need to feel that they're listened to. And then based on that, act on some of the things that they shared. You're not going to be able to act on everything that they share, but if you can act on a couple things and say, listen, hey, Joe shared with this idea. We thought it was great. This is why we're implementing this. So people are seeing are seeing their ideas in action. But the stay interview is it's just a conversation.
Yeah. Well, Lisa, I just want to close with one last question. Training, I think everybody knows, is very important. And how does that help employee engagement in a spring manufacturing company?
when employees feel that their company is investing in them. And we also need to change the conversation that training is not punitive. I'm sending you to training. Training is I'm investing in you. And when you do that holistically, asking that employee, where do you see yourself 6 months? Where do you see yourself a year from now, a couple years from now? Well, you know what? I'd like to be a supervisor. Well, how can we make that happen? You know what? I came across I got this flyer in the mail. I'd love to send you to new supervisor training. When you get back on Tuesday, let's you and I sit down. You can share with me the things that you learned and some of the things that you would like to implement. Instead of just sending that person to training and dropping it, now you're having a discussion and you're letting that person know that you're invested in them, that what they learned is valuable, and that they're going to have the opportunity to use it. So out of all the things, unfortunately, when budgets are tight, it seems that training and development is the first thing that gets cut. That really needs to be one of the last things to be cut. Because you can either say, well, if I invest all that money in my people, they're just going to take that training and leave anyway. Or you can ask yourself the question, well, what if I don't train them and they stay? Do you want a well-trained group of employees that feels valued because you are making an investment in them? And it does matter.
Well, Lisa, I just want to thank you for coming to be a part of the program today. And how can people get in touch with you? I know you have a lot of resources out there that are really, really valuable.
Yeah. My website is lisaryanspeaks.com. And there are lots of videos and resources on my website. I am also pretty prolific on LinkedIn. And because there's lots of Lisa Ryans on LinkedIn, just put in Lisa Ryan and Grategy and I will pop right up. But I put videos and articles and all kinds of additional resources there. So just mention you heard me on the show and would like to connect.
Well, Lisa, I know you trained me well because I sat through 2 of your sessions, and I just want to say thank you very much.
You are very welcome.
In addition to Gibbs Interwire, the Springs Are Everywhere podcast has been made possible by the generous support of our silver sponsor, Automated Industrial Motion. You can learn more at aimcoil.com.
Thanks for joining us for the Springs Are Everywhere podcast. You can learn more about the Spring Manufacturers Institute at smihq.org. Be sure to subscribe and like us on YouTube and on your favorite podcast platform. You can learn more about our two guests, Jake Hall and Lisa Ryan, in the winter 2024 issue of Springs Magazine. Once again, I want to thank our platinum sponsor, Gibbs Interwire, and our silver sponsor, Automated Industrial Motion, for making this program possible.
Did you know that a spring is used to reduce tooth crowding and gapping? Coil springs are placed along the brace's arch wire. These coils are used to address spacing issues. Remember, springs are everywhere, and maybe even closer than you thought.